I just want to do God's will.
The kind of revolution that the world needs is a Christian revolution.
If you want a miracle, you've got to expect it to happen.
You're the recipients of God's grace and God's blessings, and you rejoice in that reality.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Life Today Live. I am Jordan Murphy and I am excited to have you all with us today. You know, I have a statistic here that says about 1 in 4 Americans suffers from a diagnosable mental illness in any given year. I read that and it shocks me. Like, that is me, that is you, or somebody that you know. And it's so easy when we receive these diagnoses that we live with stigma and shame and judgment. But today, our author, Erin Kerry, wants us to live beyond that. She wants us to live beyond our label. She is an integrative health coach and a functional nutritionist. And I am just so excited to have her. Erin, thanks for being with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. What I love about you is that, like, you're partnering science and faith and experience and education. But let's start with your experience. I mean, this is something that you know about from, you know, a health coach and a mental health advocate side. But what does your testimony look like? Where did the root of live beyond your label start for you?
Yeah, well, I always share that my passion does come from my pain. And so I was diagnosed with 3 different, pretty scary sounding diagnoses by the time I was 18. At least they were for me. First, it was PTSD. Then I struggled with depression for a long time related to the PTSD. And then I was diagnosed at 18 with bipolar disorder. And bipolar disorder is one of those stigmatizing labels, right? Because we describe the weather as bipolar.
Yeah.
We describe like just somebody who shifts their mood really quickly as bipolar. It's described as a personality trait. And it's not. It's a clinical diagnosis when, for me, the way it showed up for me, and it's, you know, very different for everybody who suffers, but I would have long bouts of depression. And then eventually my depression would send me up a little bit too much. And that sounds like a great thing, but it's not a great thing when it comes with self-destructive behaviors, when it comes with increased risk taking. And it led me into some really scary situations. Eventually it led me into finding myself pregnant with my daughter when I was 22 at the end of college. And at that point I was so done with this label of bipolar disorder. I was angry at God. I was angry at myself, at my broken body, my broken brain. I thought, I'm just always going to be like this. And so I was self-medicating on alcohol. I was partying. I was engaging in self-destructive activity because I just didn't want to be in my body anymore. I didn't want to be living this life in this body. And so I found myself pregnant with my daughter. That was my wake-up call. And that eventually led me on the journey to finding some habits that led me into healing. But it was a long road. And I struggled for a really long time. And those labels, unfortunately, they did limit me from being able to connect well with myself, with others, and definitely with my Heavenly Father, which is ultimately what this message of my book. I want it to be a reconnection message. You know, I want it to be a message of hope, to reconnect with the body that you feel like is working against you, to reconnect with the brain that you feel like is broken, and ultimately to reconnect with the God that maybe you thought abandoned you and left you for a little bit. He didn't, even though that's so hard to believe when we're suffering from, I mean, like you said, 1 in 4 people are suffering. And so I want there to be hope and tangible solutions beyond what I was given. I wasn't given a lot of good resources. I was given, well, you have options. You can take your meds and sleep longer. That's fine, and it can work for a little bit, and maybe it works for some people all of the time. I didn't find that to be true for me, and I don't find that to be true for a lot of the people that I work with. We need more tools. So that's what my story has led into.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. I always think of a little backpack. You know, we want tools in our toolbox and the experience to say, okay, I know that this is what I need to pull out at this time, right? You know, and I relate to your story of, you know, being diagnosed and then a doctor just says, here's your options. And you're right, that works for some, but it doesn't work for everybody. And, you know, I'd love to know where you stand on, some people are having all these feelings and they never go to the doctor and you know, they feel like, I wish I just knew what was quote unquote wrong with me, right? A lot of people feel power in, you know, naming what they're going through or being able to just have an answer for something, right? Where is the line with that of, you know, sometimes people need to name it, but then there's the labeling side of things.
Yeah, I love this question because literally my family was discussing this last night. My daughter's in
Mm.
grad school. She's going to study clinical psychology, ironically. And
Wow.
so she was discussing this with her class yesterday. Her professor was talking about, where do we label people? Do we not label people?
Yeah.
Is a diagnosis helpful or harmful? And I think it's a both question. I don't think it's an either or. I think the label can be really relieving, especially, I mean, I think that there are certain diagnoses that you're like, oh, that's what's going on. I mean,
Mm.
even for example, I did some hormone, this is probably TMI, but I did some hormone testing recently and found out my cortisol is too high. And I'm like,
It all makes
oh,
sense.
well, okay.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
tracks with everything I have going on, but it's helpful information and it's
Mm.
validating. And so if that information is helpful, it validates you and it causes you to seek the support you need and you get that support, awesome. However, sometimes there are certain things, and in my case, it was like I had this validation that there's something wrong with my body, but I wasn't really given, again, the tools to
Yeah.
help support me long term. And that was something that turned into, like, we've got the labels that are diagnostic, but we have those self-assigned labels. Again, that I'm
Mm.
broken, I'm alone, nobody gets me, nobody's going to understand what I'm going through. And then it turns into shame language,
Yeah.
which is not helpful for
Mm.
anybody. And so that's where I think these labels can be helpful, but it depends on how you allow them to filter through your identity, the way you see the world. I think for a lot of us, we make sense of our actions because of our labels,
Yeah.
but then those labels can hinder how we're living out our purpose and how we're living
Mm.
out our life. And that looks different for everybody, but it's tricky. Ultimately, I believe that all of us, we're given an identity in Christ. We are his workmanship, created to
Mm.
do good
Amen.
works. And that's huge. That should be the ultimate identity. And sometimes these labels can get in the way of that. And if your label is getting in the way of that belief, then it's a good time to maybe look a little bit beyond what
Yeah.
else you could be doing to support yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I love how you're talking about the labels that sometimes we put on ourselves. And you have an incredible testimony. And you talk about, maybe those feelings of places where you feel like God has abandoned you or your body is working against you. It's easy to self label in those situations or go off the labels that, doctors have given. But what are the labels that Christ replaced, to just transform your life? And how did he do that for you?
I mean, the first one I would say is redemption. There's
Mm.
so much redemption in the life of my daughter. I thought, and I was an overachieving firstborn preacher's kid, so I thought
Mm.
getting pregnant would be the worst thing that could happen to me. I lived in a small town. I thought everybody would know, and they're all gonna, it's like scarlet letter on my chest or something, right? Like this is gonna be the ultimate. But instead, I was met with so much love and grace and encouragement. I was in this little Bible study with all the women in this Bible study were at least 20 to 30 years older than me. And I remember the day that I told them that I was pregnant, I was so scared because I thought they were going to judge me. And they didn't. They threw me the
Wow.
biggest baby shower. They gave me so much encouragement. I mean, it was wonderful to see how
Oh,
I was met through. I mean, I saw a lot about how God viewed me through the actions of his people. And I know that's not always the case for everybody. And I
yeah.
hate that. I absolutely hate that not everybody has gotten that experience. I think God can show up for us in ways that we least expect. And for me, I received that through these, what I would consider old ladies. They were probably like my age at the age I am now, right? But I considered that old when I was 22. And I think being given that label of redeemed and freed from the shame and
Yeah.
the grace that I was given, that really forged a new path for me ahead. And just knowing that I was loved and that I was worthy of his love and that he
Mm.
didn't leave me all alone. I
Yeah.
wasn't alone. I wasn't helpless. And these are constant labels that I'm trying to reframe for my life as well, because some of these wounds are deep.
Mm.
So
Mm.
and all of us, we all have these things that can get really deeply embedded in our self-talk. And I talk a lot in my book. I have a whole chapter about how your self-talk impacts your health because we don't think about that. And when we're in patterns of negative self-talk and these neural pathways that we're just constantly, we have these old, videos in our head of what we're saying to ourselves, these drill sergeant statements. Ooh,
Mm.
it's like it starts typically when we have like an inner critic or something, it's supposed to be helpful. We do it to motivate ourselves, right? But it can really come out in a mean drill sergeant-y way.
Yeah.
And those are the things that I struggled with and I still struggle with to this day, which is why I wrote a whole chapter on it so that I
Mm.
can help other people with the things that I'm learning, constantly growing in progress.
Yeah. And I think that it's so encouraging and empowering and freeing to hear that you, who is like a mental health advocate, you are a coach, like you still struggle with some of these things because you say it's a deep wound. And I think a narrative that's passed around, or something that we say to ourselves, right? Again, with that self-talk and the shame, is like, oh my gosh, like I keep messing up. Why am I still dealing with this? Why can I not conquer this? You know? And I love that the Lord says, like, our prayer to the Lord should be, give us our daily bread, right? Like focus only on today. The Bible says focus only on today, because it's so easy to spiral out of control and get overwhelmed with the fact that we are not perfect. But even in our weakness, like he is made strong, right? Like he has redeemed you and he has freed you. And I love that, like you were just welcomed in such a supportive group. When you said that, I got full chills all over my body from that Bible study that you were in, because you're right, that's not really the story for a lot of people. Yeah. But what an incredible act of like God's love and God's goodness. And I've got to know, like, what is something that you know now that you wish that you could go back to your 22-year-old self and say to her?
I wish that I could tell my 22-year-old self that you're right where you need to be, that this is exactly where you need to be. And even the struggle, the symptoms, those were, and I know this is going to sound crazy to some people, and it's a really difficult reframe, but I believe those symptoms were protective at the start. I believe our symptoms of even anxiety and depression, some of those fluctuating mood symptoms, are usually there to give us alerts. They're there to help us to pay attention. I think what happens is we do, like you mentioned, we ask questions like, why am I struggling with this? And that's shaming. That's self-shaming talk, right? Why can't I get it together? Why do I keep getting depressed? Why do I keep getting anxious? What is wrong with me? And when we ask those questions, we create a rupture in between our bodies, our minds, our spirits. And that's what I really want to help people reconnect, is instead of asking like, what's wrong with me and why, what is my body telling me with these symptoms? And how can I use that to reconnect? How can I use that to redirect and create stronger connections and support? I think, unfortunately, oftentimes it goes for too long. We suppress, and then it volcano erupts, and that can create worsening symptoms, and that shows up in so many different ways. But if I could go back in time, even to my early, like 14-year-old self, it'd be like, hey, wait a minute. You're pushing too hard. Because I would push, and I would crash. And I would be depressed on the weekends, go to school, make it through another week, and then crash because I wanted to do better. I wanted to achieve. I wanted to look like I had it all together. That just created more depression for me. And so if I could just go back and say, hey, can you just give yourself a break? Be kind to yourself. There's a song, Be Kind to Yourself. Every time I hear it, I cry because I think about that little girl who just wanted to achieve so bad, but would not stop pushing and crashing. And so those are, I guess, the two things that I would say to myself.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. And I've got to know, so like the pushing and the crashing, I think a lot of women can relate to that, or just like maybe the Enneagram 3 personality types, right? The
Totally.
achievers,
Guilty.
right? Yes, I am right there.
Yeah.
Did you see that kind of blossom into other areas of your life as you grew up? Because a lot of times people think, oh, like that achievement status ends with school. It ends when you graduate.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, no, I mean that has been my whole life. That has shown up since I was little, for as long as I can remember. There's just this drive in me to do more, to be better. And that's where that inner critic comes from, that, ooh, it's not always super nice, right? And so
Yeah.
I've really had to learn. Honestly, it wasn't until I got married, I didn't know how bad I talked to myself. I didn't know how mean I was until I started saying things to my husband, whether it was, like about oh, I'm gaining weight, or I'm so fat, or, like all these little things that like it'll just slip out of us. And he's like, do you talk to yourself like that all the time? He's like, I don't really like how mean you are to yourself. That sounds really mean. And I thought, oh, you think that's mean?
Right.
That's just what I'm saying out loud. You should hear
Yep.
inside my head.
You don't even
And
know. Yep.
right. And so I that is the pattern that I thought helped push me to do what I needed to do. But unfortunately, it was just creating more imbalances for me. And I think for the women out there, the people out there who are high achieving, just to realize that you don't have to be mean to yourself to do the things that God is calling you to do. Like he's equipped you just where you are. He's given you the tools. You have the tools. You don't have to drill sergeant yourself into submission to what it is that you think you should be doing, right?
My goodness. I'm over here, you guys, like, when she said that. I don't know why that has never occurred to me, but it is so, so true. And what's hilarious, Erin, I don't know if you can relate to this. It's like the things that I say to myself, I would never say to a girlfriend.
Oh,
you know what I mean? Ever.
Totally.
I love like the inner critic, these things that you're saying. And I also relate to the husband situation. I just got married about a year ago, and it is so true how like things that you think are completely normal, they're like, yeah, that's maybe not the best, you know, but it's so that true. Sanctification process. I love it. And I'm sure like, I love all these tools that you're giving us. There's a couple that I would absolutely love to dive into because, right, we have these symptoms, we have these patterns in our lives. And now it's like, okay, well, what do we do with it, right? Like we don't want to just label ourselves, like you're saying, of somebody that has an inner critic. Where do we go from here? Let's go into adding variety to your diet. I am in a journey myself where I'm trying to figure out like what foods work for my moods or my hormonal support, like all of the things. Where did this journey start for you, and what have you discovered?
Yeah, well, it started, I will say, because I gained so much weight on medication early on as a teenager, I was into crash dieting, right? Like I would go on a diet and I would try to fix my body by limiting my food or by taking away carbs or whatever it was. And so it wasn't until I discovered the gut-brain connection, I learned about gut health, the gut microbiome, and how the gut microbiome is the ecosystem of bacteria that helps to even synthesize our neurotransmitters. 90%, over 90% of our serotonin, our happy neurotransmitter, is made in the gut and communicates with our brain. And if we're not giving our body nutrients, then we might not be making those things that are going to help tell our brain that we're good, that we can be calm and chill. I had no idea that food played a role in mood in that way. And so it was really just trial and error for me. I had to clean up my relationship with food for sure, because I only associated eating healthier with dieting, and that creates a drill sergeant mentality, right? Because then it's like, can't have that, can't have that. And that's so negative. I say my favorite thing to tell clients is a body in stress won't digest. When we are in a stressed out state, God designed our bodies so incredibly well with our internal stress response system. It's called the HPA axis, that when the HPA axis is activated, we're not going to pause for a snack to digest it, because we need to survive the stressor. We need to survive the threat. God designed us to be able to keep going when there's a threat, not to digest well. Because if you think about it like ancestrally, right? Like if you're running from, I don't know, a lion or something, your body, it's not a good time to pause. So many of us, we are running from figurative lions all day long, right? Like I got to do this, I got to do this thing. And so if we just eat while we're thinking about the next thing we're going to do, or while we're working or whatever, it really does hinder digestion, and it can create a lot of digestive issues. Maybe it feels like we just don't feel settled after a meal, or maybe we have some indigestion or heartburn, things like that. And so creating a healthier relationship with food means creating a safe, relaxed environment while you're eating, because food is just better digested that way. And so I always start there. So that's something that I discuss in that section of the book. And then I do discuss the food mood connection, because our neurotransmitters, every single cell in our body is fueled by the nutrients that we eat, including how our neurotransmitters communicate. And so it's really important to make sure, yes, that we're able to digest that food so that everything flows the way it needs to and gets to where it needs to go. But we also need to be digesting things that the body goes, oh yeah, I know what to do with that. I know how to take an apple and break it down and use it for fuel. And we really do need nutrient dense food to do that. We've got to have B vitamins and magnesium to even break down our carbs, fat, and protein. So I talk a little bit about that in the book. But yeah, I think it's really important to just kind of get away from that, oh, I only eat healthy if I want to fix my body, to, well, I could change up what I'm eating, change up how I'm eating, and that can really impact how I feel. And when I feel better, maybe that kind of perpetuates a cycle. So then I continue to make the same choices, right? And I'm a realist. I have 3 kids and life is busy, and I am not perfect at this by any means, but I do love the concept of addition over restriction. Instead of focusing again on that negative, can't have this, to go, okay, what can I add today? How can I add some vegetables into my day? How can I boost my protein? Because protein contains amino acids that make our neurotransmitters, right? It's like just little by little. So that's a big part of what I talk about in there.
I absolutely love this, because I was telling Erin before this, like I have been on a journey, right? And I mean, how long did you how long did it take you to kind of figure out these are the foods that work for me? Because I mean, there's foods that I could eat, right? That I'm like, but I do not like that, and you're not you're not going to, that's when it gets into the restriction or that negative mindset, right? And then it's like, oh, I have to eat this. It's like, sitting down to eat the lima beans or whatever that is, for you. But finding, those foods that are like superfoods that are great for your body, the nutrient dense things. I mean, what did that journey look like for you specifically?
Well, I think a lot of it comes from a place of going, what you just said, what do I actually like? Because can I be honest? I don't love asparagus. I don't. I try to love asparagus. I figured out at some point blanching asparagus, cold blanched asparagus actually tastes pretty good. It's kind of crunchy.
I was going to say,
it in hummus and stuff.
It's the texture.
It's the texture.
Yeah.
It's weird. And I don't love it. And so I had to start going, okay, what do I actually like? And here's another one, ice cream. I don't actually love ice cream.
Oh,
I would
Erin.
eat, I know. Okay, I know this is controversial.
Oh my goodness.
In my family, we don't like ice cream that much, but I think a lot of times I would eat ice cream if I felt like I was restricting it, right? Like if
Yeah.
I felt like, oh, I can't have that, I can't have that. The more I
then
said
you
I
want
can't
it.
have that,
Yeah.
the more I wanted it.
Yeah.
So being able to go, well, what do I actually like? And giving myself permission, well, I have the freedom to eat whatever I want, but not everything makes me feel the same way.
Yeah.
And that takes a long journey of self-awareness. And I'm still in process. I mean, I'll admit it, I am mid-40s. So things are shifting in my season of life. And so my response to food is shifting.
Yeah.
There's a lot of changes in how my body is digesting things, and some things that I used to love that I felt like gave me a lot of energy don't. There are some things that I'm adding in to support my body in new ways
Yeah.
that I'm like, oh, like overnight oats. Never in my life did I ever think that I would like oatmeal, but I love that overnight oats create resistant starch that help to feed your gut bacteria in a different way to create short chain fatty acids. That's fascinating to me. So I'm adding that in and trying it, and it's okay. So
Yeah.
it's a constant journey of going,
Yes.
does this make me feel good? Like if I could, oh my gosh, I would eat donuts all day long because I
Preach,
love
girl.
them.
I
I
love
think
them.
they're amazing, but do they give me the energy to speak to you, right? Like I would be
Yeah.
stumbling over my words in my like post donut haze without mental clarity. So I really do try to eat things that make my mind feel clear, and
Yeah.
it takes a lot of tuning in to figure out what that is, and it looks different for everybody.
Yeah. And sometimes the post donut haze is totally worth it, A chocolate
I
donut with
and
sprinkles. It is worth
That's
it.
so right,
Yeah,
right? Like I
yeah.
live in Texas. I love chips and salsa. I'm going to go to a restaurant and eat chips and salsa.
Yeah,
And I'm
yeah.
going to be okay with that.
We're going to live it up. Us Tex-Mex girlies, we have to stick together. Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
love it. And whenever you said it's a journey, that is exactly what was going through my head, because a lot of times, instead of, just thinking restriction, it really is a relationship. And I think it's especially difficult for women, right? Because our hormones are constantly changing. The weather influences us, all the things. And so it really is just, like you said, being intuitive to your body and asking, what does my body need from me, or what can I do for my body, right?
Absolutely.
I love all
Yeah.
these tools that you're giving us. As I feel like I could just talk to you forever. And I think a meal plan book maybe should be coming out next or something. I mean,
I think there is a book about nutrition coming out
oh
soon.
my gosh. Well, I cannot wait to talk about that. Sorry to spill the beans. I didn't know this was happening, but I'm like, this is naturally where we should go,
It is. It is.
I love it so much. I know we only have a couple minutes left, but I would absolutely love to briefly touch on exercise and what that does not only for our body, but for our brain. Walk us a little bit through that.
Oh, this makes me so excited. Okay, so one of my favorite things about exercise that I learned a little bit more recently is that when we move our muscles, when we flex, constrict, when we're doing something like strength training, we release a protein called myokines. And myokines, when researchers discovered this protein, they called them hope molecules because they have the ability to cross the blood-brain barrier and literally bring hope to our brain. They have antidepressant effects, anti-anxiety effects. They help to decrease cognitive decline. And that all happens when we just move our muscles. So if we think about, again, I think I could go back to how people used to live. Like we were people who moved and worked and lifted. I was at some museum not long ago where I lifted an old iron that women lifted back in the day, like an iron board iron. It was like 20 pounds.
Oh
Like,
my.
what in the world just to iron your clothes?
Yeah.
20 pounds. And so it's physical activity has always been a part of human existence. And now, of course, we're like fabricating it at the gym, but
Yeah,
that's still
yeah.
a great thing. That's a way that we can help to create more connections in our body. And I do think movement can also impact our connection with our creator because it's helping us to tune into that body. What does my body need today? Do I need to do strength training? Do I need to just run it out a little bit? Or can I do something more gentle and slower to just help my body calm down and relax in that way? And there's another thing that happens when we exercise more so with cardio is that it increases something called brain-derived neurotrophic factor. It's called BDNF for short. And that is like a miracle grow for the brain. It helps your brain to create better connections. And it's another thing that can help it prevent against cognitive decline. It has antidepressant qualities. And so for me, I think about the time when I was struggling the most with my mental health was post high school. In high school, I exercised, I was an athlete, and then college is like, I didn't do any of that. And I really struggled. And when I added movement back in again, and it can be anything. I mean, I do all the things because I just love, I call it having the zoomies sometimes too. You just need to get it out because it really does. It helps create mental clarity for me. And so even today, before knowing I had a couple interviews, I was like, I got to go for a walk. I need to just sweat a little bit. I need to get out in the sunshine because it just helps me to feel more regulated. It's a really helpful emotional regulation tool. So those are just a few benefits of movement that I like to talk about.
I absolutely love it. And I just totally agree. And the component of being able to be in nature while you're exercising, it's just a double whammy, but in the best way, being able to connect with what God has created. And I heard a couple of months ago, it was saying like women had lower cortisol back in the day, right? Because all the things that they were working all day long, right? But they were kneading dough, they were gardening, they were ironing, and nobody's ironing in a frenzy. You know what I mean? It's like we live in a constant state of rushing, and then we wonder why we're stressed out all the time.
Absolutely, and so exposed to so much like bad news all the time. And it's just
it's like what are we consuming? In the music that we're listening to, the shows, the radio. I mean. We're constantly bombarded. And so that's why I'm so grateful that you were here with us today to teach us how to live beyond our label, but also like to have all those tools in our toolbox and know when to pull them out. And also that, this you mentioned when we were talking earlier, this isn't just a book of do all these things, but it really is a partnering to go through the journey of life. So thank you so much, Erin, for just sharing your wisdom with us. I am so excited, especially for, maybe a little part 2 interview with the meal planning or whatever that looks like next. But I know that our audience will want to get connected with you. So you guys go out and get Erin's book, Live Beyond Your Label, wherever you buy books. It is available. And then also you can connect with her on her website, erinbkerry.com. We love you guys. Thank you so much for listening today at Life Today Live. We will see you next time.
Possible to do the will of God. He has given us the will to choose to come, to choose to bend our necks, to choose to bend our necks, and to choose to learn.